Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Jodi Rudoren, editor-in-chief of The Forward. We have a big crowd today for Etgar Keret, and we're excited about it. So it's going to take us a little bit to welcome everybody in. While you are coming in, if you can put in the chat, let us know where you are dialing in from, and maybe share with us your favorite Etgar Keret story, or I don't know if you have a personal encounter, anything you want to say about why you are here today. You can go ahead and post that in the chat, and we'll get started in just a few minutes. Except that I fear, yes, our chat is not enabled to allow you to post to everybody. So we are going to work on that in a minute. Matt, if you can try to change the settings so that people can post to everyone, that would be great, so they can use the chat. In the meantime, welcome again. I'm Jodi Rudoren, editor-in-chief of The Forward, and we are thrilled to have Etgar Keret with us here for this Israel at 75 conversation, as well as my partner in crime, Laura Adkins, our opinion editor. We are working on enabling the chat so people can chat during the conversation, but just to let you know, a bit of tachlis, we will be taking your questions, and you can submit those, I believe, right now using the Q&A button on the bottom of your screen if you're on a laptop, and probably on the side if you're on a phone or a tablet. So if you have questions already, you're welcome to put them in the chat now. And we're just going to wait for a couple more minutes in case people continue to roll in. And if we get the chat set up, you can share information there about where you are coming from.
Will the recording be available? Yes, I think it will be, right? Or we need to
thank you. We always get that question, and I'd love to get it right out the bat. Yes, we will be emailing out the video of this event probably tomorrow. And so you'll get it in the same email that you got your Zoom link. So thank you for asking that question. It's always a question.
But it will be kind of weird when people will get it tomorrow. And
yeah, why will it be weird?
Because people will say, oh, let's listen to the talk, and then say, yeah, the talk will be recorded. And say, yeah, dummies, we're listening to the recording. Of course it was recorded.
Right. It's very meta when all right, well, let's get started. Oh, the chat is open now, I think. Yes?
Yes. Thank you, Susan, for kicking us off from cloudy San Francisco.
Awesome. All right, so you can use the chat throughout our talk. Right now, we'd love to welcome you all. Tell us where you're from, what you love about Etgar Keret, your favorite story, or your favorite ice cream flavor, as you wish. And it's great to have, wow, Cape Town, Edinburgh. This is exciting. Tyler, Texas. I love it. All right. Thank you all. This is great. So
Memphis,
I want to welcome you once again. Hold on just one second though. It is great to have this crowd here. Once again, I am Jodi Rudoren, editor-in-chief of The Forward. We just finished celebrating our 125th year. We are gathered here as part of our celebration, commemoration, marking of Israel's milestone anniversary at 75. And I am thrilled to be here with Laura, our opinion editor, Laura Adkins, who is our opinion editor and host of our new podcast, That Jewish News Show. She will share in the chat, once everybody stops introducing themselves, the link where you can listen to That Jewish News Show every week. And it was also her brilliant idea to invite Etgar Keret, everybody's favorite Israeli author, to share this moment with us and to be here with us today. So thank you, Laura, for that. Etgar probably does not need much of an introduction in this crowd, but I'll just say a few highlights. He really is the leading literary voice of his generation in Israel. His books have been published in more than 50 languages. They have won many, many, many prizes, including the Sapir Prize, Israel's top award, the National Jewish Book Award, the Charles Bronson Prize, the Book Publishers Association Platinum Prize, many times. And he also won the Prime Minister's Prize, which I suspect he might not get this year from this prime minister, but we'll talk more about that later. And he has also made many, many films with his wife, Shira Geffen. They together won the Cannes Film Festival's Camera d'Or Award in 2007. And many other people have also made shorts and features off of his stories. He is also a tenured professor at Ben Gurion University He is also a dad. His son and my son have the same name, Lev. And I just, when I first went to Israel as Jerusalem bureau chief for the New York Times, someone connected Etgar and I up, and we had this great dinner in Tel Aviv, one of my first weeks. He really explained the whole country to me, and I would call him up from time to time, and he always had a great perspective on what was happening in the country. And for the last year, he has been publishing what is really my favorite Substack newsletter in existence. It's called Alphabet Soup. If you are not signed up, you should sign up. It is delightful and blissfully short, which is always a great thing. Not many newsletters are like that. I am still having trouble chatting, so I'm going to not post the link right now, but I will soon.
Hey, Judy.
So welcome, Etgar. I see you already have something to say. Jump in.
Yeah, no, I just want to say that somebody wrote that I'm not lit enough, so maybe I can bring my night light and put it here, and I'll be more lit.
I mean, I see you fine, but like
Whatever you want to do.
whatever you want to do. Is
No,
right.
I always do what the chat tells me to do. So
Well,
just a second.
All right, bye, Etgar. I guess we're done with him. What, Laura, you want to? He's just going to get his light. Okay. We were just talking in the green room before, just everyone, we can maybe get back to this, but about Etgar having interviewed Netanyahu years ago. So we might get into that later. He's now got, we can see we have tech support here. All right, can I go ahead and ask you a question? Are you ready?
ויהי אור.
So when we first invited you, Etgar, we talked about that this is a particularly, you were like, this is a hard time. It's been a hard time for me to write. It's a hard time for me to talk, but, with the protest movement and the 75th anniversary at the same time. And now, in the interim weeks, it's been become an even harder time. Your Meir Shalev, one of your close friends, another author in Israel, died, and then a few days later, Yehonatan Geffen, you're not only your father-in-law, who is such a cultural giant. When you wrote about him, you said he's the author of the books that every Israeli kid grew up on and the songs that are the soundtrack to our lives, along with many other things. And the loss to the country, of course, is enormous, but also to you personally. And I guess, I just lost my father as well. So I've been thinking about this. And first of all, our condolences, and thank you for being with us despite all of that. And I guess I wonder if we could start by just asking how you approach, as a writer and such a public figure, like writing these eulogies for these people that you were so close to. And also if you just talk a little bit about, what they meant to you and how this period has been for you with this weight.
Yeah, so I just want to say that, I'm a child of Holocaust survivors, and my mother had lost all her family in the Holocaust. And I think that because of the post-traumatic effect of that, she always raised us that with the idea that funerals are redundant, that funerals are the kind of events in which all the people that nobody wants to invite home takes their chances and jump on you and catch you next to the grave and talk your head off, and that people who are civilized don't go to funerals. So I grew up with this idea, and the truth is that in ways that I'm ashamed of, most of my life I tried to avoid funerals, kind of living the ideas of my parents until my parents died, and both my parents, I didn't write a eulogy when they died because I didn't even know how it goes. Like I knew what Kaddish was and stuff, but I like funerals were something that I wasn't good or known anything about it. And I spoke about both of them, but spontaneously, over the grave, I said all kinds of stuff, but I never wrote a eulogy. And when Meir Shalev died, in his will, he asked that I'll do his eulogy. So of course, when it's in somebody's will, you can't even say to him, hey, I'm not good at that. Maybe you ask somebody who's better. because it's a last request and they're not here. So I wrote my first eulogy, which I don't know, like if it's just basically the feelings I had about Meir, and then and a week later, Jonathan, who was even closer to me, then died, and they're in the same graveyard, about 50 meters apart. Wow. So I knew that if I want eulogize Jonathan, he'll know because he's very close to Meir. So it was my second one, but again, it's funny because in the demonstrations, I once had a sign that became viral that said, "I used to write books, now I write signs." And Shira made a joke, and that she said I should go with a sign saying, "I used to write signs, now I write eulogies." It's like things are getting worse and worse. But I hope it won't become a habit. It's not that much fun saying what you feel about people that die. It's better to write fiction instead.
Yeah, part of the forcefulness of your stories for me is the way that you're really able to capture the voices of the characters as you're bringing them to life. And the two stories that in particular, I can post them in a chat in a second, that have come to mind for me in the recent months are Lishbor Tachazir, Breaking the Pig, and Ha'ish al Hayareach, The Man of the Moon, who in English, the version was translated to A Thought in the Shape of the Story. In the first one of these, you describe a small child who's heartbroken when he learns the lesson that in order to get what he thought he wanted, he has to destroy the thing that he's come to love. And the second is a story that makes me cry every time, about a man who thinks outside of conventional wisdom and is dearly punished for it. And these stories are both very moving, and I can't help but think about the current situation and certain characters in it. And just to start, I'm curious, does your own writing affect the way that you understand and see the perspective of real life characters with unsavory characteristics like Netanyahu and others in his government?
Yeah, I think that the way that the fiction works, or that writing works, is really that when you live in life, I think every human being, but me even more so, because I have many rabbit-like qualities. So when I go through life, most of the time I'm stressed and I'm surprised and I'm reacting to things and I'm trying to hold my ground and I'm doing all those hundreds of things that really don't go in line with being lucid and attentive and empathic. But when you read a story or when you write a story, you're in a safe zone in which you can actually see things and accept things that sometimes it's more difficult to accept them outside. Now, I always saw literature or art as this kind of padded cell that you can enter and you can run and bang your head to a wall or do all those kind of things that are dangerous. But inside here, it's like a lab in which you can learn about your emotion and your thoughts and basically kind of take all those thoughts that you try to cancel the moment that you raise in your hand and write them all the way to their end. And I think that and with me, by the way, I have almost a routine that I can be very angry. Like, I think I'm a loving, angry person, but I can be kind of angry about things and I can get obsessive. And my way of dealing with obsessions when it comes to disliking a politician or disliking a neighbor, it doesn't matter, like somebody, is that if I feel that I keep thinking the same thoughts about this person for over and over again for days, then basically I write a first person narrative story in which this guy that I don't like is the protagonist. And the way that it works is that basically, it's really like when you write a story, you're the mother and the father of the character. So you can dislike him, but you still remember how he was cute when he was a baby. You still feel responsible for his or her fate, you know? So in this sense, there is something about it that when I write those stories, I have to find something in them. I have an example for such a story. In my latest collection, there is a story called Good Deed about a rich woman that makes an application that helps well-off people find the closest beggar to them. So whenever they want to be nice, they open it like Waze, you know, and they say, oh, like, you know, like a blind person.
To make it easy for them.
Yeah, yeah. And I wrote this story after reading a text written by a billionaire woman that she wrote how she gave $200 to a homeless person. And when I read this, in the beginning, it annoyed me. You know, it says like, you're rich, why do you write this? You know, all this kind of stuff that kind of annoyed me and got mixed in my head. And I realized that those thoughts kept returning. So by writing this story, and in this story, she's a character, the woman who decides this app, and you understand why she wants to do it, and you understand what's missing in her life. And in the end of the story, you don't say, oh my God, like rich women should write more apps for rich people to feel good when they ask. It's not what you feel, but you say, she's human, she's hurting, you know, she doesn't want to be where she is. And for me, this is a good technique of dealing with those kind of emotions.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's what you're talking about in terms of having empathy for people who you really disagree with or really are different from is a great thing for journalists and for fiction writers. And it really resonates with me. I want to go back to what you said about the signs and, you know, your sign that said, I used to write books and now I write signs. And you talked just now about the kind of safety that you feel about fiction writing in terms of being in this padded cell. I want you to tell us a little bit about what these last months have been like for you. You've been very active in the protest movement. I mean, I think you've always been a voice on the political left there, or have been for a long time, but this is both what's happening in general is of a different level, and your engagement with it, and how that's tell us a little bit about just what you've been up to and why you have been galvanized in a different way, and also how it's affected your writing, your thinking, your creativity to be so engaged in the protest movement that's kind of galvanizing the country.
Yeah, well, I think, you know, I always had my political opinions and, you know, and being very talkative about them, but that's normal. I think that, you know, every person who talks a lot and has a chance to express their opinions, they do that. But I think that the crucial change that happened with this new government was really, if let's say, if you imagine, I don't know, like politics as a basketball game, okay? So I could be, I don't know, a Charlotte Hornets fan, and you could be a New York Knicks fan. They don't have them anymore, right? Do they have New York Knicks?
Yeah, we have them.
Yeah, okay. Good things.
Also the Brooklyn Nets, though.
Yeah, Brooklyn Nets. Okay, so I'm saying we can support opposing team and we can have enmity between us, and that's okay. And all my life, I've been in the liberal left camp, and there were people on the other camp, and they said this, and I said that, and we argued, and it was fine. Now, the idea with this government was that they said, we want to change the referees. We want the score to begin with us having 10 points over the other team. You can't whistle fouls to us. And what happened is that the news spread is a very strange one, because the people who are demonstrating with the protesters, they are from various political opinions. You know, I think it's very important for Netanyahu to say that it's right against left, but it's totally untrue, because, you know, I said to my wife, I go to a demonstration where the chief of staff, Bogi Ya'alon, the ex-chief of staff, is speaking. Gideon Sa'ar is speaking. The head.
But these are people you've been criticizing for years.
The head of the Secret Service. So I said to Shira, I usually demonstrate next to those people's offices, and now I'm demonstrating shoulder to shoulder with them. And I think that this just shows that we kind of move to a meta level. You know, it's like in those Marvel movies when they come those aliens and then the superheroes and the supervillains fight together. So the idea is that there is something so crucial that has to do with the nature of this country, you know, the Declaration of Independence, the kind of structures that people like my late parents fought for that seems to be threatened. It's not inside the system. It's basically kind of overriding the system. And again, for reasons that are very, very obvious, you know, and that scare me, because the idea is that Israel, when it was formed, it said it was a democratic Jewish state. Now, the idea, what is the relation between democratic and Jewish, is a hot potato that had been rolling for years. You know, so in the Declaration of Independence, they said that, and they said we're going to write a constitution, but everybody wanted to push or postpone it, not to reach the question of deciding the hierarchy between Jewish and democratic state. And now, the way that I'd like to see it, I'm not saying, you know, that I'm saying out of my personal ideology, is that basically that Israel is a democracy with Jewish traits. It's basically a democracy with a yarmulke and tzitziot, you know, but it's basically, first and foremost, it's a democracy, and then it's Jewish. Now, there are people who think that Israel is first and foremost a Jewish state, and, you know, it has this kind of trendy democratic traits to it, but this is the order, you know. In a couple of arguments that I had, you know, people who argued with me said, you know, we Jews lived without democracy for 2,000 years, and when democracy will be gone, we'll live as Jews for another 2,000 years. This is something that is not crucial to our existence. We can keep it, but only if it doesn't bother our other ideas. Now, some of those other ideas that are seen as Jewish in nature are, for example, inequality between men and women, or preferring Jews over non-Jews, you know, or defining Jews in a different ways. So all those kind of things that for me, they are going against the liberal nature of this country. I'm saying, like, I want to live in a country that first and foremost, everybody's equal. First and foremost, people can speak their opinion. First and foremost, you know, they have a system that helps to protect them against the governing thing. And after that, we can eat chalas, and we can do kiddush, and we can go to the Western Wall and appreciate all those things that makes us Jews. But I'm saying, for me, the pedestal that it's standing on is democracy. Now, I want to say something about the Jewish religion in general. You know, maybe this is true for Christianity, but I'm too ignorant and Israeli to know that. But the things that I think about Jewishness, we're following God. Now, every quality that we have is in the form of God. You know, it's like because God is loving and merciful, and God is vengeful, and God is all wise, and God does all those things, and we have them. So the idea is that when you talk about Jewishness, many times it's basically talking about which traits that you have, you want to put up there, which of them you see as most holy. Now, for me, Jewishness was always about being polemic, about being merciful, you know, about being curious, or all those kind of things. But for example, now we have people like Ben-Gvir, who is our Minister of Defense, that talks a lot about how being vengefulness and how taking revenge, how killing your enemies is a big mitzvah. Now, I'm saying that, you know, fighting with your enemies is a necessity. And God can be vengeful too. But when I look at myself, I don't think that first and foremost, I want to be vengeful. You know, I want to be merciful and maybe angry. And when I'm vengeful, I feel uncomfortable with myself, but I understand that it's human. But I wouldn't want to build my entire thought about the idea that taking revenge is important, that Jews are better than non-Jews, that non-Jews do not deserve the rights that Jews have. For example, that, you know, that I can have a gated community and refuse people to come into it, because they're Muslims or Christian or Buddhist. So those kind of things, I feel that they can rip the fabric of an already fragmented society apart. This idea is that the moment that you want to drastically change the status quo, it's really like we have this rocking boat, and you want to say, no, everybody to the left, then of course by instinct, all the other side runs to the right. And suddenly when somebody wants to topple the boat one way, then there are voices saying, let's topple it the other way. It's really, really a strange thing, because think about it, Israel, for 75 years, secular people go to the army, ultra-Orthodox don't go to the army. For 75 years, they argue, they complain, but this status quo is kind of being kept in a way. But the moment that the ultra-Orthodox are in a coalition saying, we don't want the Supreme Court, we've been wishing to destroy the Supreme Court for years, then people from the liberal left wing say, hey, the Supreme Court is our synagogue. You wanna destroy our synagogue? We don't want to go to the army for you. You go to the army now. And the idea is that I think it's a little bit, if you try to imagine, let's say, a couple, a family that are together. And the nature of fights is that, I don't know how good you are at it, but me and my wife, we fight a lot. So the nature of fight is usually that they have it's like a ring, you have the lines, and the idea is saying, like my wife says, you didn't do the dishwasher, I had to wake up in the morning and you didn't do the dishwasher, and I say, hey, but who took our son from school, huh? And we're doing that. But if, let's say, my wife will say, you didn't do the dishwasher, and from now on I'm going to tie you to bed and you get to eat only when you're okay, then I say, yeah, okay. So I tell you what, so I'm going to steal your car, sell it to Bedouins in the south, and use all this money to get drunk. It's this kind of escalation that will always, it will be kind of a cause and effect. So I'm saying, when ministers in this government talk about demonstrators and they say they're terrorists, they're anarchists, they should be put in jail, the Supreme Court judges should be put in jail, let's put pictures of the head of the Supreme Court, a woman, and jump on her face. When they do all that, there is some kind of retaliation from the other side that becomes as extreme. I don't really feel like there are many things that I see in this fight between the two sides that I don't feel okay with, even when they come from my side, because let's say up to 2 years ago or 3 years ago, it was really uncommon to demonstrate in front of a house of a politician. What happened was that with the Bennett government, they started demonstrating against all the people who were in Bennett's party and harassing them in synagogues because they felt that they were a right-wing party in a left-wing government. Now, the idea is that now the protesters are doing the same, because they're saying, okay, this is the system, so let's go to this guy's house. And this kind of a escalation and this kind of feeling on the liberal side of no more Mr. Nice Guy are basically creating some kind of a bot dialogue, a dialogue that is all about kind of trying to hurt your enemy or neutralize your enemy. And I'm saying it's not true for all the communities, but it's true that all those kind of things that would have been condemned in the past, now they're either legitimized by politicians, mostly by the government, or even if they are not legitimized, the government gives them a blind eye. And when you say, hey, when those guys did that and Netanyahu ignored it or supported their action, when Netanyahu, for example, compared between the protesters against the new laws, to the settlers who burned houses in a Palestinian village with people inside them, and he said there are two extremes. Now, what's isn't there a difference between a citizen who goes and makes a legal, not violent demonstration for a cause, and people who go into a village and basically in a racist way do a collective punishment, kill livestock, hit people with sticks and bars, burn down houses. When your prime minister says we're the same, the chances that people on the liberal side will start escalating. He said, "Oh, prime minister says we like village burners. Then you know what? We're gonna go all the way." And I'm saying that I do feel that basically there is something about this tsunami that if you look at it, it began from the government. It began from people in this government, that, for example, would run after Arabic parliament members and do threatening movements and shout bara bara, which is basically what you yell in Arabic at livestock. This is what you yell at sheep or at cow. So when a government elected member runs after two parliament members just because they're Arabs and does those racist gestures, it's very, very difficult to explain to people in the street that they shouldn't say something racist to Palestinians or to Arabs. It's really like it feels like as if the government went across the line, crazy, mad with power, and all this craziness trickled down and became something that is now half a democracy and half an anarchy.
I think we are all on the same page that we're in a very tenuous and tense situation in Israel. Do you see a way forward, especially as both camps are only becoming more certain in their opinions? And are there avenues for persuasion so that there can be some common ground?
So first, I want to say that this is a perfect storm, what's happening now. If Netanyahu was not on trial, if Netanyahu wouldn't have betrayed Gantz and cheated him last round and had another political alternatives, then we would never see a government with a Kahana member, a racist person who was condemned for terrorism by the police and had the 8 indictments, becoming the minister of minister of police. The idea, and I'm telling you, there are people in the racist right wing that they are infamous, and they're called La Familia. It's like those right wing movements that Trump used to compliment. So those guys, that there is all of them, almost many of them have criminal records. They killed people, they stabbed people. When they do a demonstration and our minister of police goes to meet his police force, on the way of meeting his police force, he does high fives with those fascists. What do people in the police force should feel when they see the minister acting with distance towards them, but hugging people who they know are criminals, So I'm saying it's so mad, it's so crazy that the idea, it's as if the political figures are supposed to be some kind of parental role models, then basically everybody who looks at those people and they say they're completely crazy. The Galit Distal, the minister of propaganda, that's a new ministry that they invented. Maybe now that we're becoming less of the democracy, they wanted to have somebody that will be a minister of propaganda. She said a week before Holocaust Memorial Day that because the majority of the protesters are Ashkenazi, European Jews, and because they were not talking nice, then from now on, she allows people to misuse the memory of the Holocaust to insult people. As a minister, I'm a son of Holocaust survivor. 5 days before Holocaust Memorial Day, I have a governmental figure saying that people can come to me and say, and they did say to me, by the way, in some occasion, we wish the Nazis would have killed your parents in the war because then we wouldn't have to deal with you, you asshole. Now I'm saying, the people who are doing it, they're doing it with the blessing of a minister in the government. So all this idea of later saying, let's calm things down, we're all brothers, they can't work the moment that the people high up there allows themselves to act in a wild and crazy way. When Netanyahu wants to send to New York a consulate, a woman who's saying about that she will never sit and eat with Africans in the same table because they have make crazy diseases, and that she would want all of them being kicked out of Israel. When he wants to send her as a consulate of Israel to New York, then basically he's saying something about what's important to him and what's not important to him. And, you know, and this has an effect that basically is blowing up this country.
Yeah. I want to voice some of what we're seeing from the Q&A already. I'm going to start with something that Barbara Bass wrote in. She says she returned from a brief trip to Israel a few weeks ago, and she asked everyone she saw if they could see a way forward to peace. She said she talked to people on all over the spectrum, and most of them, they couldn't envision a way to peace. And she wants to know what you think. And I think this is reflective of a number of questions in the chat that are about moving from the internal Israeli question of democracy to the question of democracy more broadly, including the Palestinians, and what we think might happen with the capital S situation there. Do you have any hope that out of this protest movement will come actually some path toward peace, as Barbara is raising here? And then I'm going to follow up with that with the other big question, which is what you think we as American Jews can and should be doing in relationship with this. But those are two biggies, so I'll let you start.
Well, for the first one, I want to say is that when you talk about, you know, the future of a Palestine, you see, I'm taking off a shirt because I'm beginning to sweat.
Yes, we're giving you a workout here.
Yeah. So I think, you know, as an old grumpy imaginative guy, that basically the idea of countries is going to become obsolete very, very quickly. You know, I think that, you know, let's talk about the US. You know, in the US, the idea is that I read somewhere that they made a poll and they asked the people if they would have a problem if their children would marry a Muslim. And even among the Republicans, I think, I can't say the percentage, but I would say at least a half said, sure. And then they asked them, would you have a problem if your child would marry somebody from the opposing party? Let's say if a Democrat would marry a Republican would marry a Democrat, and they say that 80% said that they had a problem with that. So, you know, even those people who are conservatives and wouldn't mind their child dating a Muslim, they wouldn't want the child dating a Democrat, and vice versa. So I think that we live now in this kind of a Facebook binary age, you know, with social media that really have no capacity of handling any form of ambiguity and obscureness. And what happened is right now is that every person, when he sits in front of his computer or she sits in front of a computer, they see their people. They see the smart guys who really think like them, and they are their people. The people that they hate are the people that they are forced to meet. They are the people in the street. They are the people in the highway. They are the people in the store. This is a problem. You know, if in the past, British people hated the French, today, British people hate the British because this is how it works. We feel at home, you know, through our feed, and then we go out there and some people get on our nerves. So I'm saying, you know, we never had such a situation in Israel. We never had such a situation in the US, you know, when you saw the storming of the Capitol, you know, and I think that if you go to other countries, if you look at Bolsonaro, or if you look at other countries that are being gripped, you know, when you look at Poland, then the idea of countries that are ripped to two opposing tribes that hate each other seems to be going all over the place. And until we find something to do with social media, I think that the outcome of that would be that we live in a world where, let's say, the economical superpowers are in any way international. You know, Microsoft, Google, all those, McDonald's, you know, they are not connected to one nationality. And with nationalities that basically keep fighting with each other, you should, I don't know if you saw in France, the demonstrations for changing the pensions age. You know, basically, they got policemen in hospitals, they burned down cars, everything is on fire. And I feel that there is something, all this is this kind of feeling of, let's say the countries become this kind of dysfunctional structure. It's like a family that can't control the children anymore because the children don't trust them and they don't want to listen to them, and they realize that if they go crazy, nobody will going to do anything to them. So I'm saying that in such kind of a melting reality with the rising of AI and GPT, to be honest, for me to think about a Palestinian state, I just try to think about all the people in the Middle East staying alive, or about Muslim not getting lynched, or Jews not getting stabbed. It's like I'm saying, when we get past that, we can go to the other stage. But I really, for me, let's say, looking at Israel, looking at the state, it almost goes for some kind of a cantonization. Let's say, all the Democrats go to California, all the Republicans go, I don't know, to the Midwest. Okay, we can visit each other. We'll send postcards, but you live in a place where you have no abortion. We live in a place where everybody can smoke pot. It's really, I think that the same way that the internet basically allows us to put ourselves in little boxes, with people that we're in harmony with, the world will have to find some answer to it. So I'm saying, I could say to you, yeah, and I believe in a Palestinian state, but the truth is, if you ask me what's more likely in 50 years, that there will be a Palestinian state, or that the Israeli state will stop existing, I can't tell you what are the odds for those two things. I can tell you that both of them are, let's say, likely. I would say that Israel not existing is even more likely than having a Palestinian state.
Do you think that in some ways the current situation, of course, Netanyahu has added fuel to the fire, but it seems like perhaps optimistically we've reached a boiling over point that might actually have good effects. I mean, I have a lot of connections to the more religious wing in Israel, and it seems like there are some rabbis in yeshivot who are really taking seriously the fomenting right-wing behavior and violence among a small portion of right-wing Israeli young Jews. And it seems like there might optimistically be some positive changes that result in these protests. Are you seeing that as well, or is that a naive, optimistic outsider view?
No, again, I think this is true too, and it's good that somebody is optimistic around here. No, the truth is, I am optimistic too. It depends on my mood, but what I want to say is that the interesting thing is that our former president, Ruby Rivlin, gave a very famous speech, which was called the Four Tribes speech. And in this speech, he basically said, this is a country that has 4 tribes. I hope I get them right, but it's basically the settlers, I think maybe the ultra-Orthodox, the secular, and the Arabs. Maybe I'm getting it wrong. I don't know, but something like that. And he said that those tribes are separate, so they have nothing in common. And for me, when he gave this speech, by the way, the first thing I thought was my family, which was very, very close. I'm a left-wing liberal. My parents were both right-wing people. My sister is an ultra-Orthodox that has 11 children and more than 50 grandchildren, and she lives in Mea Shearim and speaks Yiddish, but she used to live in the settlement. And my brother is an anti-Zionist, left-wing activist. So I'm saying, I said, okay, my father always said, nobody knows what's right. The only thing that counts is that you try hard. And you try hard with your left, I try hard with my right. In the end, we're all wrong, but we're giving it our best shot. So when Ruby Rivlin says that, I thought it was mega pessimistic, but then I really saw this kind of enmity, this kind of a prejudgment, people being not nice to you just because you're ultra-Orthodox, or just because you're Palestinian, or just because you're gay. And what I want to say is that the demonstrations, because they are not demonstrations of a group, is a demonstration of a camp. It's in Hebrew, the word is lamp, like gush, lamp. It's basically something that got kvetched together so hard that it became as hard as a diamond. So when I look at those demonstrations, then I can see on the one hand, people who are demonstrating against occupation. And on my right hand, I can see people who are Air Force pilots who are demonstrating against weakening the Supreme Court because they think that they'll be court-martialed in Hague. So basically, they don't have the same opinions, but they fight for the same cause because they realize that the Supreme Court protects both of them in different ways. And the same goes for a group of religious reformic Jews, or even Orthodox Jews coming from settlement to demonstrate against the reform, side by side with gay and lesbians demonstrating for gay and lesbians' rights, or women demonstrating for women's rights. And what I'm saying is that in this ecosystem, unlike demonstrations from the past, where, let's say, if you held a sign that was not in line with what everybody else had in mind, they would talk to you. Here, you have this kind of something that is almost kind of libertarian idea-wise.
That's interesting.
And it's beautiful because you see that up there, they're all heading in the same direction. It could be from religion, it could be from their personal hurting, it could be from being prosecuted. But all those things got them to the square, got them to the same conclusion, got them to the same demonstration. And this is something that is very inspiring.
A couple of weeks ago, you had something in your newsletter. I don't know if you remember, we had this email exchange, but the illustration was of like a car in a crosswalk. And it was right after there had been this car ramming attack in Tel Aviv. And I opened it and I immediately thought it was going to be like an essay about terrorism. And it turned out to be not about that at all. It turned out to be about the patriarchy. So something much, lighter. Turned out to be about a woman who was totally overwhelmed by sexism, basically. And I found myself, as I was reading it, relieved. And I wrote you this note about it. And you wrote back, you said, it's funny how readers today, including myself, seem to have a greater need to extract from a piece of fiction some clear ideological stand so that one could identify the writer as either a friend or a foe. And I'm really interested in that, like the idea that that's increased for you. Tell me more about what that means, where you see that.
Well, I think that this goes back to this idea of the fact that I used to see art as a safe haven. Basically, it's really like, in biblical time, if you killed somebody by mistake, you could run to a safe city and nobody would be allowed to hurt you in it. So I always felt that it was this kind of safe haven, basically in the fact that, I can read Lolita and then try to get what it means to be a pedophile, but this has nothing to do with life. Like, it talks about life, but it's fiction. Now I think that we live in an age where we're going through some kind of a devolution, and in this age, this idea of ambiguity and obscurity, it starts to become a threat. Now I think that this is not a right-wing or left-wing problem. It's across the board. I really, really think that, that for example, there is something about cancel culture that says our society can't deal with some problems, so we will take the liberty to deal with those problems in ways that, can be sometimes aggressive or whatever, because if we won't do it, nobody will do it. Now, I'm saying this was done for a right cause, and it created change. But systematically, it's a little bit like people who were, hanging nomads and homeless people or black people in the South to fight crime. There was a problem. People were not able to deal with that. So they found a way to deal with that. But there is something about this way that it's kind of breaks the system in which when I go to the street, I ask myself, where am I here? I think that now we live in a world that everybody basically thinks he's the boss or she's the boss. And the idea is that when we are in dialogue with other people, we want to say, are there disciples or in my kingdom, or are they part of my cult, or are they from an opposing tribe that we should destroy? And this really, I think that again, that when you look at it, the fact that Lolita, the books that I mentioned, you can't teach it in so many colleges and universities, which is crazy. It's like when I was, by the way, in Italy, in a conference supporting the Ukrainian in the war with Russia. Somebody there said happily that as an act of support of supporting the Ukrainian resistance, they canceled the conference about the writing of Dostoevsky, 100 Years for Dostoevsky. Now, Dostoevsky was not a Putin supporter because Putin wasn't born yet, okay, when he wrote his book. But it doesn't matter because the idea is that he's Russian and Russians are bad and let's do something bad to Russians. And the idea is that we live in an age where basically you use information, like when somebody says a sentence, you don't say, what does it mean? What stands behind it? What can I learn? But you say, can I use it as a weapon? Can I hold this sentence and hit him on the head? Can I use this sentence as a shield? Will it protect me? But the idea is that language and art do not work in this way. A good work of art is there not to reinforce your idea. It's there to confuse you. But if you go now to Netflix, and you try to sell them a series that tries to confuse you, nobody will want to have this. They will want to have a series like, I don't know, like The Chair. Okay, when I see The Chair, it's a wonderful series. I don't know if you got to see it. Judy, do you ever see this series, The Chair in Netflix?
Yeah.
So I'm saying, so first of all, it's a beautiful reality because, you see a department, the head of the department is a woman. She's Korean. Her right hand is a woman. She's black. I love seeing this series and then going back to my own department where the head of it is white and a man, but it doesn't matter, but in the TV, it's really all great. And basically all the white men are either incompetent or nasty. And you see this series and you say, oh my God, this is a perfect, equal, wonderful word. But this is on TV. It's not in the real world, and I'm saying that this idea, it kind of reminds me that when I was a kid in the 70s, there were a couple of plane crashes, and there was an idea that on airplanes, they won't show movies in which planes crash. And as a 10-year-old, I thought, shouldn't they put this energy on fixing the engines? I don't mind, you can destroy Earth in a movie. Just make sure that my plane won't crash, please, So I'm saying that now this idea is saying we can't fix reality, but we can fix this book and this TV series. So if we will have those kind of people who will give us the trigger alerts, people who will be those sensitive readers, then books will be safe. And then you get to the street and get mugged or maybe raped. And then when you want to have an abortion, they say that it's not allowed. But on Netflix, you see a beautiful word full of equality. So I'm saying that, as an artist, I really, really feel that I've been living in an age where power was taken from art, where basically the idea of being an artist, if in the past being a stand-up comedian was the best job in the world, you get on stage and you say what you feel like. But now, if you say what you feel like and people think it's not nice, then Will Smith will slap you. Can you compare a bad joke to a physical attack? No, but this didn't stop the people of cheering him when he got his Oscar, So the idea is that everything is wrong in that sense that people think also when it comes to fiction and to art, that it's also something that you should ask yourself, do I gain something from it or will I lose something from it, And this kind of reductionism is really something, it's this kind of stressfulness that doesn't let us live, It's really like, I try to sell a TV series to Netflix. And one of the things that they talked to me about was really that it's very, very important to be able to have a series that is good to define for the algorithm. Okay, so I made a TV series which has time travel, but can't count as science fiction. It's comical, but in the third episode, there is not even a single joke. Okay, it deals with real estate, but there's actually a family drama in it.
Oh, so you broke the algorithm.
Yeah, so it's not on Netflix. We're safe. But I'm saying, but the perfect Netflix series would be a Netflix series that when you read the 3 lines, you know exactly how you're going to feel when the series ends. When you say, I'm going to see a series about Madoff, and then I'm going to be angry
Angry.
and not trust banks. I'm going to see a series about Chernobyl and then think that those Russians, they should get their game together. I'm going to see something about, so the idea is that basically the deal is that before you enter the work of art, you know how you're going to come out of it.
They've actually been, they've started labeling it with they've really expanded the adjectives that they use to describe the TV, and in this exact way, soapy or whatever. And they've expanded the warnings. My husband and I have been joking about, there's some show we've been watching where they always warn that there's going to be smoking and there's never smoking. I don't know why they have to warn us about smoking anyway, but it's like, they've gotten much more granular at like, it's not even just comedy, drama, whatever anymore. Now it's like soapy or, political, whatever. It's exactly part of this thing. So,
but the strange thing about it is really, I once met a writer that she came from a very, very Catholic home. And she said that until she was 18, her parents wouldn't allow her to read any books that wasn't the Bible. And she asked her mother, why? Why don't you allow me? And she said, books, they're very, very shifty. You always know what your state of mind is when you enter a book, but you never know what you're going to think when you're going to live it. Now, this is, of course, totalitarian regimes were afraid of books. Religious fundamentalists were afraid of books. But today, also, left-wing liberals seem to be afraid of books. Everybody seems to be afraid of art. Everybody seems to want to make art some kind of enslaved to some one narrative or another. We want to have a book that will know the bottom line. We want the good guys to win. We want if somebody who's racist to die from cancer. But the truth is that that if the work wants to represent the complexity of life, they could not do that unless you want to have a fundamentalist religious or a fascist or whatever, or Stalinist fiction. You should let people do things in the writings that you wouldn't allow in real life. And that's crazy because, you talk about soapy, you talk about people smoking, the most popular thing right now on all those platforms are either documentary or fiction series about serial murderers.
Right.
But it's always serial murderers who do not smoke, by the way. And there's always there has to be some kind of a major female character, usually the crazy mom that he wears her dresses. But the idea is that if everybody talks well and behaves, and if we have a representation for a minority, then actually serial killing is not that bad. So it's totally mad. I was in a debate, and in this debate, people talk about the Jew face thing of Sarah Silverman. This idea, the Jew face thing. That basically only Jews should play Jews because Hollywood misrepresents Jews. And this came, from only transgender can play transgender, only homosexual. And I said, seriously, but everybody thought that I was trolling them, that I said that keeping this logic means that we should also take care of the most misrepresented group in Hollywood movies, which are sociopaths. And that only sociopaths should play psychopaths. Why should we see in Silence of the Lamb, an actor who really shows this crazy guy in a negative light? Maybe if we find a sociopath actor, then we will see somebody who will show it in a more kind of moderate light. And also sociopath actors find it hard to have work. So we can also help them, get employed. So I'm saying it's this idea of it's on the one hand, we try to reach perfection, a place with no insult, with equality, when people don't say bad words and everything is fine. And on the other hand, you go to the streets, you go to Starbucks, you see that the word doesn't correlate with that. So instead of art being able to talk about our problems, art becomes some kind of a pravda, some kind of a false presentation of humanity that we are selling to ourselves. But we should talk about who we are, not who we pretend to be. We
I
lost
I
Laura.
wanted no, I'm here. I'm sorry. I have a buzzer that sounds like a bat out of hell, so I have to jump up every time my door buzzes. I apologize. But I want to ask about language in your writing. I think that reading your stories in Hebrew and in English are a very different experience, and Hebrew and English themselves have very different characteristics. And it seems that in recent years, you've done a lot more writing for an English speaking audience rather than Hebrew stuff that's translated. So I'm curious who you see yourself as writing for, and if you yourself feel your voice is different when you write in those different languages.
Yeah, so first of all, I always write in Hebrew and I get translated. My English is not good enough for me to write in it, but
Fooled us.
what? Sorry?
Pretty
You could
good.
have fooled us.
Okay. Oh, thanks.
Metsuyan.
But the thing is that I can only think in Hebrew, and speaking some English, I can say that there is a fundamental difference between Hebrew and all the other languages that I know, and that has to do with how the Hebrew language, the history of the Hebrew language. You know, many times when I talk overseas with children about the Hebrew language, I say to them, you know, this language, it's a little bit like Captain America. You know, it got frozen, like, you know, in an iceberg, and then 2,000 years after it, somebody put it in the microwave of history, defrosted it in an arbitrary point of time and say, hey, people, start speaking this language that you haven't spoken for so long. And the effect of that is doubled. On the one hand, you speak a language that is ancient and that really has this kind of a weight of an ancient holy language. But on the other hand, when people started speaking this language, there were 2,000 years worth of words that didn't exist, you know, plastic, water faucet, hybrid car, all those things, you know, they are not in the Bible. So what happened was that when people communicated in this language that was kind of born into life, they needed both to be traditional, to keep that old language, but at the same time, they had to be inventive and almost liberal and wild, because they had to invent new words as they speak to represent things that didn't exist in this language. And I think that the language is a good representation of Israel as a state, because we are old people and a new country. And oh my God, we're so old people, but oh my God, we're such a young country. You know, if you go to a cafe, they have a sign, open since 2008. You know, when I go to restaurants in Europe, it's like open from 1723. You know, here, if you're able to survive for 15 years, your history, you're a monument. But at the same time, we are a country with such an old history. So I feel that this tension exists in every sentence you say in Hebrew. Some of the words you say are biblical, and some of the words are made up, taken from Russian, English, Yiddish. And this kind of meshing together is something that you cannot translate. When I started publishing my books in Israel, 90% of the reviews, bad or good, spoke only about the language that I choose to write in. When I'm translated to other language, everybody talks about the plot and characters, because this factor does not exist. Because what happened is that most of my translators say, do you want us to raise the entire register or to take the entire register down? We can't write a sentence in English that half of it will be like the King James Bible and the half will be like a Kanye West song.
Although some of your sentences are like that in Hebrew, having translated you recently for the intro of your piece, and you sometimes write like that. So
I think
that's what they're saying.
Yeah,
it works in Hebrew. It doesn't work in other languages.
So what I want to say is that Hebrew literature traditionally kept this tradition that separates the written word from the spoken word. The same ways that, you know, people knew how to pray by the Bible, but would ask where the toilets are in Yiddish. The word is separate. So I could insult you and talk in an improper manner, but if I would write a story about this moment, I would immediately write it in a nice way, you know. So this was something that was kept in many years. When I began publishing, a lot of the criticism against me was that I'm writing in a language good for speaking, but not proper for writing. And this was for me basically some kind of a revolution, because I said, but the ways that we speak represents us. And when you talk about this mixture of ancient words and made up words in the same sentence, every taxi driver, every bus driver, every falafel seller speaks this way, because this is the way that the language exists. You know, if I would say to you, I don't know, את רוצה לטוס איתי בחללית, which means would you want to go on a spaceship with me? Then את רוצה, do you want? It's from the Bible, and spaceship is something that somebody had to make up. But this happened in English too, but in a very organic manner. You know, that's why, let's say, if Shakespeare would get on a taxi in New York, the driver would never understand him. But if Abraham would get on a taxi in Tel Aviv, then the driver would understand about 70% of what he's saying and would feel very strange about the extra 30%.
I mean, thank you for that. That's a great metaphor, a great image. And I know we're like over time, but I wanna, and people are leaving, but whatever. People are also in the chat.
Why are you leaving, people?
Asking that
for
we
2,000 years we waited for this Zoom.
To the topic of Israel, and you did spend quite a lot of time at the top of for the first half, really talking about the situation in Israel. I appreciate that so deeply, but I want to bring us back to the occasion for this talk, right? Which is, of course, that it's Israel's 75th anniversary, and that it's coming at a tough moment for you and for a lot of other people. So I'm interested in your shortest answers to 3 versions of an anniversary question. One is, what gift would you give to Israel for its 75th birthday? What toast might you make at the birthday party? And what can you tell us about what Israel will be like in another 75 years?
Well, I think that you know, there are so many gifts that I would like to give this country, but I think that that empathy is really the thing that we need. Empathy and ability to continue ambiguity and differences. You know, it's really, I think that the things that kept Israel surviving for these 75 years was basically the fact that everybody more or less respected the status quo. Nobody wanted to impose things on others. Now you have people, let's say, people from this government that really want to impose a new governing system on us. And you have people among the protests that want to impose on ultra-Orthodox to go to the army. But everybody's mostly interested in what the other people are doing and why they're not doing what we want them to do. I think that, you know, that only by kind of understanding that we're different people and that we need to get along. You know, we're like neighbors in this big skyscraper who basically need to get along. It's not that everybody needs to make the other people do what as they wish or to take revenge on the other people. So I'm saying this, the ability to contain that, I think it's the thing that Israel needs desperately, and I think that the world in general needs desperately. What toast would I make? May we outlive the 2 first temples, you know, because when Jews had a country, it never lasts over 100 years. So may we break that record, you know, that would be beautiful and amazing. And what was the third one?
Well, it's interesting. The third one is related to that, right? What will we, when we regather to have another conversation on the 150th anniversary?
Look, I want to say something. The world is changing so drastically and in such a crazy word, you know, kind of reaching singularity with AI beginning to replace people and us, and having, you know, because basically, if you ask me what's going to be the biggest challenge of humanity in the next 20 or 30 years, is that for people who are not religious, we were able to live because we saw our existence as useful. You know, I say I write stories, people like my stories. You know, some people say I bake cakes, people like my cakes. Some people say I teach children, they know English because of me. Now, in 20 years, we will not be needed and we will have to invent another purpose for our existence. Now, currently, what I see is that the most popular and default purpose is crushing the other camp that doesn't feel like us, think like us. And I'm saying that our biggest challenge will be basically, you know, when all humanity enters retirement, when we reach this pension age, and and the AI give us a gold watch, and a nice speech, that we will be able to handle it and enjoy basically this possible leisure while clinging to a different story and to a different route, and not ones that basically justifies our existence by imposing our ideas on others. And I want to say something, because I'm very kind of absent-minded, but I see things flashing, among the questions. And I want to say that I see a lot of, like, there was a thing asking if I'm aware of the fact that Israeli hospitals are taking care of wounded Syrians and stuff like that. So I want to say, I feel I'm in the family, so I skipped that. There are amazing things in this country. We're a wonderful country. They're doing wonderful things. And like almost any wonderful country that does wonderful things, there are also threats and things that we don't like that exist inside our country. Now, the idea is basically to speak out about them and deal with them. Every country has racism. The only difference is that in places like Russia, they don't talk about racism or homophobic sentiments, and in normal places, they talk about them. So the idea is that I talk about the country's faults does not mean that it doesn't have many wonderful merits.
I thank you so much for that, Etgar. It's a great place to end because, right, one of the things that we treasure about our democracy and about Israeli democracy is the ability to have conversations like these, and art like the fiction and videos and other things that you create, and for us to grapple with all of it and hopefully to do that with empathy. I think that's a great idea as a gift, not only to...
And one thing that you asked and I didn't answer, so I'll answer on the way out, that you said about the position of American Jews,
yes,
concerning what happened in Israel. So really, I want to say, can I give a long answer or should I give a short one? A middle one.
You.
Okay. Achat, yes.
So I'll tell you something really, really funny. I once met a guy, I won't say even in what country, even so you won't be able to track him, who worked for the Sochnut. You know what the Sochnut is? The Zionistic something, I don't know. Yeah. And he told me that he gets money for Israel, okay, for Keren Kayemet or for... And I said to him, how do you do it? So he said, oh, it's like a classic S&M relationship. I go to some rich Jew house and I ask him, so where is your son? And he says in Princeton. I say, oh yeah, well, my son is in Gaza, lying in the mud, and I pray every night that he won't die. Can you write me a check? And then if he writes a check and the check is not big enough, I rip the check to pieces and I say, how dare you? We put our necks there on a Jewish state while you live here in the Hamptons. Are you not ashamed? And then they write me another check. Now, for me, this was some kind of an epiphany of the idea that I think among American Jewry, there is sometimes a strong sensation of guilt. Now, this guilt is not justified. When there were two brothers, and one was called Beryl, and the other was called Shmerel, and Beryl went to New York, and Shmerel went to Netanya, it doesn't mean that Beryl wronged Shmerel. They made their decision. Israel actually needs the American Jewry, and their help, had helped this country through the generation. So I think that when Jews think about the relationship of the country, they should throw the guilt aside and basically not think that they're pro-Israel. They are not pro-Israeli murderers. They are not pro-Israeli pedophiles. They are pro-values, and they want those values to be implemented in Israel. So if somebody wants to give money, you don't give it to something that has the color of the flag. You give it to education if you want to support education. You give it to farmers if you want to support farmers. You give it to gay rights if you want to support that. But the idea is that you should treat Israel as some kind of a family that you love, and you don't just throw money in there. If a boy there, needs money for his bar mitzvah, help him, help that specific cause. And don't feel that you a priori need to support everything that has the colors of Israel. We are doing mistakes, and when a relative does a mistake, a good relative stops him, say, don't use drugs. I'm your uncle, don't use drugs, and not I'm your uncle and my son goes to Princeton and you're not, so here's some more crack for you. This is not supportive, this is not helpful.
Again, your analogies are like so priceless, which is of course why you're such an amazing writer. Listen, we are way over time, but thank you so deeply, Etgar Keret and Laura Adkins, and thank you to this wonderful audience for such robust comments and questions. Thank you for supporting the Forward. We do have other events coming up. I'll be moderating a panel on Israel at the University of Chicago on Monday, actually, and then on June 5th, it looks like I'll be at the 92nd Street Y with Michael Oren and Yossi Klein Halevi talking also about Israel. And we have a great event coming up next week in Pittsburgh with an event about our archive called Pressed. All of this you can find on our website and in your events newsletter. Please listen to That Jewish News Show with Laura Adkins and Binyamin Cohen. Please subscribe to Etgar's Alphabet Soup. Please keep in touch with us, read the Forward, and let us know what you think. It's really been a privilege and a pleasure to moderate this conversation and to be with you this afternoon. And l'chaim, I guess, to our birthday celebration where we will be aiming to have the gift of empathy in all of our lives. Thank you for all of this. Thanks, guys. And thank you to Matt Littman for doing the tech on this complicated event with so many
thank you, Matt.
questions. Thank you, Matt. Bye, everyone. Have a great evening, afternoon, wherever you are.
Thank you, Laura, and thank you, Judy. And it has been really, really nice, and you've been very, very tolerant. Usually, at earlier stage, people end the Zoom, and you were so nice and considerate. I appreciate it.
We want as much of you as we
Yeah,
do.
we were selfish also. Yeah, we wanted to hear. So, mamash toda.
Toda.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Toda rabah.